Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chad. I get questions all the time about OAS and the timing of OAS. And there's a lot more videos out there that talk about the timing of CPP because quite frankly, it's a bigger conversation than the timing of OAS. OAS has a few less options, i.e. you can't take it before 65, but you can take it after. But the advantage to it is not nearly as robust as delaying CPP. However, it is still an important conversation and there is more to it than meets the eye. The timing of it can be a little bit confusing, but once you dig into why it's confusing, it's actually logical in the end, which is kind of weird, and it has a little bit of quirks. So let's get started. All right, so first and foremost, there's a few criteria that need to be met for you to even be eligible for OAS or old age security, and that is you have to be 65 years old or older. You have to have resided in Canada for 10 years after the age of 18. Now, if you're living abroad, that requirement goes to 20 years. So you have to have 20 years of residency in Canada after age 18 to be eligible for OAS if you're living abroad, in which case you still are eligible at that time. So the calculation is relatively simple. It's years of Canadian residence after the age of 18 divided by 40 gives you a percentage. That's the percentage of OAS that you will get. What's also nice is that there's a relatively new calculator on the Canadian government website. It even brings GIS into the equation, which is fantastic, and I'll have that linked down below in the description. As of the filming of this video, the max amount you could get from age 65 to 74 in OAS is $713.34 per month. It takes a 10% bump at age 75 to $784.67. Now, that's a 10% bump no matter where you started. I mentioned earlier that you can get a larger OAS if you delay it. We're going to get into that in a minute. But the bump at 75 is a 10% of whatever you are taking at the time bump. It's not 10% based on the 65 age if you took it at a later date. So it does actually make it a little bit more interesting to look at when it comes to the break even, but we're going to look at that in a few minutes. As I mentioned earlier, there's not an early OAS option. You can't take it before you turn 65, and the earliest you can actually take it because the application process takes so long is actually age 65 plus 1 month. If you do decide to wait on OAS, you are rewarded with 0.6% per month that you wait or 7.2% per year, however you want to look at it. OAS is a taxable benefit, however, it is not included in the GIS calculation. So I have run across clients who have robust TFSAs, and it's a possibility that you take OAS income at 65 along with TFSA income, and your GIS calculation doesn't factor either of those in, and suddenly you're eligible for GIS. It's one way to look at other government programs, and it's certainly an interesting way to use CPP and OAS together to get a little bit more money. OAS income cannot be split either, and there is clawback rules revolving around it. For the 2023 tax year, the clawback starts at $86,912 and goes all the way to $142,609 if you're under 74, or all the way up to $148,179 if you're over the age of 75. And what that means is if your income in that tax year falls into that bracket, every dollar in that bracket that you're taking, you have 15 cents of OAS clawed back until they claw back the entire amount. So if you are in those retirement years and you as an individual, this is not a couple, as an individual are taking over $142,000 of taxable income, you can kiss your OAS goodbye. Now, the timing of OAS, like I mentioned earlier, is a little bit strange, but I'm going to explain it and you'll see why it is the way that it is. If you look at a graph showing calendar year 2023, 2024, 2025, underneath it, I have laid out a July through end of June calendar, and that's actually where the OAS schedule lines up. So to illustrate, for 2023 tax year, which you're about to start filing, your old age security, that the income that you earned in this year applies to, is from July through June of 2024 through the end of June of 2025. So your taxes in 2023, or your taxable income, I should say, affect your OAS for the 12-month period starting July 2024. So the 2023 income applies all the way into mid 2025 OAS figures. Now, that seems really, really weird at first blush, but of course what they're doing is they're allowing you to file your taxes in April of 2024 for the tax year April 2023, and then apply that a few months later so they don't have to go back and retroactively take money back or add more money or anything like that. So yes, it's very weird and confusing, but it does make a lot of sense once you dive in. But your 2023 tax filings that you're filing right now in early 2024 will affect your OAS, if you're taking it, of course, all the way through to the end of June of 2025. All right, I also mentioned we would look at a break-even analysis. And if you've watched me here or on the main channel, you know I can't resist a good spreadsheet. So let's jump into my spreadsheet here for a sec. All right, so here we are in my spreadsheet. And again, I took a simplified approach here. And so what that means is I did not bring inflation into the equation. I'm just taking what you could get at 65 and I'm assuming it stays static throughout your entire life. I know that's simplified, but I want to compare this apples to apples as best as I could. Now you can see here what your monthly benefit would be at 65. The maximum is $713 and change. I just rounded that down to 700 for a little bit of simplicity. You can see what the monthly benefit would grow to if you waited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then I have the cumulative income here. So by the end of age 70, if you took it at 65, you'd have 50,400, et cetera, et cetera. And I highlighted in blue the years where it is the highest cumulative value. The two black highlighted rows here are age 75, which is where you would take a 10% bump on your OAS payment, regardless of what you started at, and 83, which is approximately what your life expectancy will be, assuming you get to age 65 and have an opportunity to make this decision. And so while I argue a lot that delaying CPP to 70 is a really good idea because it's a break even around 83, I do think that's a really good idea. The positive impact of delaying OAS, I find, is significantly smaller. And if you pair that with, if you're going to delay one, I definitely recommend CPP. But if you're going to delay OAS, I'm kind of assuming you're delaying both. And another way to word I'm delaying CPP and OAS is to say I'm 100% relying on my investments from 65 to 70. That's a really, really hard pill to swallow and not one that I recommend. I almost never recommend delaying OAS, unless of course you're working. If you're working, that's a different ballgame altogether. So you can see here, 83 is approximately your life expectancy. You would have taken 167,000 had you started at 65. The optimal at that point would have been starting at age 68, but it's only a $5,000 advantage. It's not that big of a deal over that long of a time period. Even if we look at something like age 95, you would have taken 278,000 versus delaying to 70, you would have taken 321,000. That's about a $45,000 advantage. Over 30 years, 45 grand is not the hugest amount of money. And for pushing off what I call foundational income sources, that trade-off just simply may not be worth it. So like I said, I very, very rarely recommend delaying OAS, with the exception of someone who's working. But here are the break-evens, and I thought you'd be interested to see that. All right, so just to summarize, who should be delaying OAS? Realistically, in most cases, it's just people who are still working. If you're working to 67, I see no reason for you to be taking OAS at 65. Wait till you're retired. You're just putting yourself at risk of clawback if you start taking it early. Just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Other than that, I almost always recommend taking OAS at 65. I think it makes the most sense. Either way, if this is a conversation that you want to explore more for your financial picture, it's probably time for your K4 financial plan. There'll be a link in the description down below. Feel free to reach out, and until next time, keep planning.